And now, right now, we're going to go into the discussion of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. It's very deep. Well, everything in Krishna consciousness is deep. But some things are even deeper than deep. And this discussion, well, from here, shall we say, from here, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti into Bhava Bhakti, or Prabhupada calls it ecstatic love, and then into Krishna Prema, pure love for Krishna, then, well, things just get deeper and deeper and deeper. And after a while, they become even deeper. Would you believe? It's just super deep. But it's super wonderful, actually. It's really, really nice and really interesting. All right, so here we are then. It's chapter 15, which is titled Spontaneous Devotional Service. And of course, it means we're entering into the third part of the second section of the eastern side of the ocean of nectar of devotion. Yeah. All right. So Prabhupada refers to it here at least as spontaneous devotional service. Means not because we have to, but because people want to. I mean, that's in very simple, super simple terms. And you may remember right back in the early part of Nectar of Devotion, right back, that there was, it was in, what was it in? It was in the chapter 1, as I remember. Anyway, it was right back there that there was mention of how there are two types of sadhana bhakti, two types of practice of devotional service. And practice, in this context, let us not forget that the term practice is used very specifically in the sense that when you are on these levels and doing these two forms of devotional service, you are not perfect. You are learning how to become a devotee and practicing doing the right things and practicing avoiding doing the wrong things. This is practice. And, in that context, well, one example, an example which Prabhupada gave, was the child learning how to walk. And at first, for the child can't do it. I'm sure we've all seen children in that phase of their lives that the child wants to walk. The child really wants to walk and tries to get up and maybe gets up and falls over. And the parents, it depends, but some parents, they will help the child. They'll sort of lift the child up and hold the hands of the child so the child is up now and the child is on his or her feet. And so then they lead the child forward and the child's legs are sort of moving. So it's kind of like the child is walking, but the child is not walking. Yeah, there's a whole process of assisting the child. But, it all seems to walk it all seems to work because we were all children before, and now we can walk. And for many years we've been walking. Yeah. And now we're walking. There's never a question of, okay, I've got to move my leg now, and I must be careful not to fall over. These are important considerations for the child. I must move my leg in a certain way. I must be careful, otherwise I'll fall over. So that's practice. But then after a while, the child can walk and run and so on and so forth. Yeah. But at first there was a stage of learning and practicing. Sometimes we give the example also of driving a car. Well, there can be so many examples. Learning how to cook. Prabhupada was talking about cooking, Maharaj Ambarish. Learning to drive, learning to operate a computer, learning to play mridanga, learning to play kartals, you name it. You name it. If you're not familiar with it, you have to learn. And while you're learning, you have to practice. And after a while, you get it. And generally, when you get it, then it becomes, they say sometimes, second nature. Second nature. Okay. So that was the description back there, right in the beginning parts of Nectar of Devotion. That Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the practice of devotional service according to rules and regulations, or any sadhana bhakti. Whenever someone is said to be doing some form of sadhana bhakti, means not perfect, learning and practicing, that phase. And literally the word sadhana translates as practice. So then, two forms of practice, the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti we've been talking about for a while now, couple of weeks or so. But then there's the second form, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and the way Prabhupada described it there, or it's not just Prabhupada, it's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in fact. It's Srila Rupa Goswami, and Prabhupada's just presenting what he says, is basically, the idea is that after learning and practicing for some time, and then you could say, in English we say, getting the hang of it, so you know how to do it, and you can just do it easily without having to agitate your brain. So after having done devotional service like that, under rules and regulations, the way it's described in the very beginning is that gradually you get a taste for these things. And Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami, they give the example of someone who is doing deity worship. And the person has been doing deity worship according to the rules and regulations, part of which is early in the morning you must get up and worship the deity. You must get up early at a certain time and worship the deity, and whether you feel like it or not, whether you want to or not, but you just have to do it. But then the way Prabhupada explains is that after some time, and like we said, getting the hang of it, now you know how to do it, you can do it easily. then you come to the point, Prabhupada says, that you're happy to get up in the morning. It's not something like, oh, do I have to get up again? You may even want to get up, and you're making plans. We'll worship the deity in this way or that way, and do decorations and so on and so forth. Yeah. And not because you have to, but because you want to, because you like it. You have a taste for it. So that's how Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is introduced back there in the beginning of Nectar of Devotion. As we're going to find out a little bit right now, but particularly tomorrow and Friday, is that devotees, believe me, and you'll have to do a little bit of fastening of seat belts because it's it's very extraordinary actually, and extremely elevated. But what I'm saying is there's a lot more to it than just being a fired up devotee who likes doing devotional service rather than who thinks, oh, why are they asking me? Why are they asking me to lead the kirtan? Oh, why can't he? He never leads the kirtan. Whereas more advanced is, I want to lead the kirtan. So that's, anyway, let's see. All right, so let's go into now chapter 15. And in doing that, we have to bring to your attention a very important point about the editing of this chapter, particularly, and maybe to some degree, the following chapter 16, but definitely this chapter 15. Yeah, we have to bring to your attention some things which, depending on which version or how recent a version of Nectar of Devotion you have, if it's very recent, the book has been updated. If it's an older version, then there is a misuse of terminology of a particular term. And so if you have an older version of Nectar of Devotion, then let me just tell you, let's just go right into it right now. Chapter 15, paragraph 1, the very beginning. Examples of spontaneous devotional service can be easily seen in Krishna's direct associates in Vrindavan. The spontaneous dealings of the residents of Vrindavan in relationship with Krishna are called, brace yourselves if you have the old version, are called Rag Atmik or Rag Atmika, not Raganuga. Raganuga, wherever the term Raganuga is used in this chapter, it must be changed to Rag Atmik or Rag Atmika. It is the Sanskrit form. Ragatmika. Ragatmika. I'm sorry. Yes. Aha, all right. So now, just so we know what we're talking about, rag atmic as opposed to raganuga, let me read two verses from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which actually, frankly, do appear in Caitanya Charitamrita also, but I don't have the numbers from Caitanya Charitamrita. But from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, 1, 2, 270, and the following verse, 1, 2, 271. So let me read it's the Sanskrit. Virajantim abhivyaktam vrajavasi janadisho rag atmikam anusrita ya sa raga nugochyate. Oh, ragatmikam anusrita yasa raganug ochyate. Raganuga bhakti is defined as that bhakti which follows after the rag atmic bhakti found distinctively in the inhabitants of Vraja. And the following verse 271, Raganuga vivekartam ado ragat mikochyate. In order to define Raganuga bhakti, first rag atmic bhakti should be discussed. Aha. All right. So the critical term, the essential term here around which these two terms are focused is rag. Rag. One devotee, one type of devotee, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the Brijbasis, Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda, Srimati Radharani, the gopis, cowherd boys, etc. They are rag atmic. Atma, of course, means the self. Rag means a spontaneous attraction. They have within themselves a spontaneous attraction to Krishna and serving Krishna. Rag anuga. Rag, of course, means that spontaneous attraction. Anuga, if you're familiar with some of the terminology we use, Rupa Nuga, you may have heard of that. Rupa means Rupa Goswami. Anuga means follower. We're followers of Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada Anuga. We are followers of Prabhupada. Rag Anuga means devotional service, following the devotees who have rag. Means you don't have rag. Maybe you have the beginnings of rag. You have an attraction to developing rag, spontaneous attraction to Krishna, but you have to do sadhana. You have to learn. You have to practice how to serve Krishna like those devotees who have rag, the spontaneous attraction. And let us just conclude. I'll tell you a couple. Will I tell you a couple? Let me just tell you one translation of a verse. Now, actually, this is interesting. It's Madhya Lila 22, 150. Whereas in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is the next verse after the two we just read a couple of minutes ago. But in Caitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22, 150, Lord Caitanya is instructing Sanatan Goswami. And the simple translation, listen to this, Rag is defined as spontaneous, deep thirst for the object of love, Krishna. Rag is defined as spontaneous, deep thirst for Krishna. Bhakti, that is impelled exclusively by such a thirst, driven by that thirst for Krishna, is called Rag Atmika Bhakti. Yes. Okay, that's a little introduction. I hope we're making sense there. And we will continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Hare Krishna.